Hi, everyone. Let me tell you a British children's classic about a tiger who came for tea. It seems that there was a young girl named Sophie and her mother who were interrupted by a knock at the door, and when they opened it, they met a handsome and stripy tiger. They showed him no terror, no panic. In fact, they were just bemused while the tiger proceeded to eat and drink everything in their house and then just left. When Sophie's father came home, instead of lamenting that there was no food left, he took them all out to have a wonderful dinner together. The tiger, by the way, never returns. Like a lot of British culture, I wasn't sure that I got exactly what made that story so popular. It seemed odd to me that just because someone knocked at the door, Sophie and her mother felt obligated to open it. And why, when they saw that the knocker was a tiger, did they let him in the house? What was the real message that this story was supposed to teach children? And why was it so wildly popular? I think my difficulty started at the door. Let me explain. You see, the book of Vayikra opens with a myriad of halachos concerning different types of korbanos, offerings that were offered in the Beis Hamikdash. The different korbanos had different rules concerning their offering. Some needed to be prepared in the northern section of the Mikdash, others could be prepared anywhere in the Azara. But there's one rule that the Torah offers that, quite frankly, affects both the shlamim, the voluntary korban, and the chatas, the korban that's brought to atone for unintentional sin. The Torah seems to stress that in both cases, that these korbanos needed to be slaughtered Pesach Oel Moed at the doorway or the entrance to Oel Moed. The Talmud in Zvachim adds that the doors needed to be open in order for the korbanos to be accepted. Now, why would the doors need to be opened in order to make korbanos acceptable? What's the message that we're supposed to learn from that? Moreover, we know of one quite important korban that, when offered, had a closed door policy. The Mishnah in Psachim notes that the korban Pesach was offered in three groups, and when the Azara was filled with people bringing their korbanos, the doors to the Azara would be closed. There's a debate between Abaye and Rava as to whether these doors were closed on their own miraculously or closed by Kohanim, and only then would the shechita and the preparation of this korban, the korban Pesach, begin. And what happened to the open door policy at that point? And if the door opening is so important to the korbanos process, why would Abaye entertain the possibility that Hashem closed the doors miraculously each year 3 times, just to make sure it wouldn't happen with the korban Pesach? Why? What's the message? When are our Beis Hamikdash spiritual doors supposed to be opened? And when are they specifically supposed to be closed? Maybe the difference comes down to whether we're opening the door to let a proverbial tiger in when we would close the doors versus the opening of a door that lets light shine out. You see, the reason the doors to the Azara needed to be closed during the offering of a korban Pesach was in order to protect the people from trampling one another. Sometimes in our haste to engage in our own spirituality and survival, we can accidentally tunnel vision and forget to consider others around us. At times, this style can be dangerous and even deadly. Fearing the people's rush inside, crowd control was implemented in the Beis Hamikdash in order to protect the people from our own tiger, our animalistic behavior in a spiritual context. Closing the doors at the time of the korban Pesach in that instance guaranteed that the focus on Erev Pesach was dignified and thus sanctified, as the sin was left outside the doors, and safety didn't mar the sacredness of the moment. Yes, sometimes the doors need to be closed in order to experience a spiritual uplift. And there's no time where this has been a more critical lesson than today, as our people run to bomb shelters again and again in order to find safety as our Iranian tiger knocks. While it's terrifying to see the sheer numbers of sirens on the Red Coat app, and certainly must be frightening to the hundreds of thousands of our brothers and sisters, young and old, infants to infirm, who are constantly going in and out of miklatim, in and out of the shelters, it's also inspiring to see Ish Esrayeu Yazoru, how the citizenry of Israel help one another out in these times, checking in on one another, assisting with getting into safe spaces safely, and with enough time to close the door almost miraculously. And it's incumbent upon the rest of world Jewry to offer our support in any way we can until Hashem brings a safe end to the current situation. Ula achiv yomar chazak. Yeah, we close the doors to keep dangerous tigers out, but also to make us all safe inside. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that our moments of spiritual uplift don't remain moments, but rather become life-changing. Rabbi Tzalel Rudinsky suggests that perhaps this is the message of the open door policy at the Mikdash for other karbanos. Like so much else that happened in the Mikdash, the goal wasn't what happens here stays here, but rather from the Mikdash experience, we wanted the individual bringing his karban to not merely look at the service, something he did and checked off as an obligation. Instead, the tachlis, the point was not the work, but rather what the person gained from the experience. We want the doors open so that the person symbolically is open to the spirit he gained there, being brought back with him or her into daily life, and to influence his friends, his family, his loved ones as well. And that can only happen when the person is open to realizing that a karban is not something you do or bring, but rather what it does to you as you walk beyond the door. Perhaps that's the message of the tiger who came for tea. The author, with her grace and humor, was teaching children, and by the way, the rest of us, how to conquer their fears. Sometimes their fears are best handled when we close the door. At other times, we need to be open to let the inspiration from an incident be impactful internally, indefinitely. Harvard psychologist Howard Gardner noted that great leaders are the people who tell the story that explains a generation and a nation to itself. That's the power of Pesach. Of the season, yes. Of the karban, yes. And of the Seder night. It's the storytelling and the experience. And it's what our religion does so well. It gives shape to that which is to what we are otherwise shapeless terrors. It tells us who we are and how to handle the unexpected and the unknown. It influences us to continue to create the story's next chapter as we both write it and read it, sometimes behind closed doors and sometimes with openings beyond, but always doing it together. The Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs explained that our national story gives us identity and hope. It's our shared stories and takeaway experiences that hold us together and give us the courage to conquer our fears. May we always have that ability, and may we get that strength quickly. Ula achiv yomar chazak, v'nis chazek. Wishing you and yours a healthy, wonderful Pesach season, a safe season, a season of victory and of redemption. And may our doors be opened and our hearts be opened to a geula, wishing you and yours a Shabbat Shalom to all.